to our People's Platform on Amplify with Lynette this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. A little bit delayed, but we're still here. We're still showing up tonight, especially on YouTube Live and on Facebook Live. I've made various promos to remind you that this is a very important conversation tonight, particularly if you live on the Cape Flats. If it's your first time that you see me, my name is Lynette Francis-Puren. This is Amplify with Lynette. Tonight specifically, it's the People's Platform where the comments in the chat shape the conversation. It's not in a studio. It's not on a public platform. It's in and on social media where the people say what they need to say, where they raise their voices and they create the conversation. So we've spoken, and I've touched on militarizing the Cape Flats, whether it is a solution or state performance. You would have known that the president of South Africa announced that the government will send the troops to the Cape Flats, but we're asking if it's about protection, because residents are asking why suddenly now, and then for how long. So we're going to examine whether sending the army into the Cape Flats addresses the root causes, or if it's simply managing the crisis. I want to hear from you. You need to tell me, after you've listened to some of the opinions of my guests, what you believe is the best option. If you are thinking, okay, is this just posturing? Is it about politics, or is it really about the protection of the residents on the Cape Flats? My guests tonight are Dr. Llewellyn McMasters. He will give his opinion, and we're also speaking to activist and community worker Roshanda Pesco, and she's going to share her views as well. I'm not sure if your comments from Facebook reaches me. Be that as it may, if it doesn't, find your way, move over, gooi lange to the YouTube channel, because there I can see your comments. I really want you to participate so that we can actually get a sense of, is this what the people want? Dr. Llewellyn McMaster, thank you so much for your time this evening. Your response when you heard in the State of the Nation address that the president said the army will finally be deployed on the Cape Flats, because this is something that the residents have asked for decades. But why now?
Yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of the Cape Crime Crisis Coalition, and we have released a statement after the announcement by the president. And in the statement, we said the Cape Crime Crisis Coalition rejects the rationale for the deployment of the SANDF to combat crime and gang-related crime and violence on the Cape Flats and in Gauteng. At that stage, it was Eastern Cape, Gqeberha was still excluded. We're saying the army, the deployment of the army is not a solution. It is a surrender. So it's a strong stance that we took. We looked at 2019 when the army was also deployed on the Cape Flats, what was called Operation Prosper. And it was launched, in different areas of the Cape Flats with much fanfare and so on, and all the cameras and politicians, that type of thing. But 6 months later, the army returned to its barracks. So there was an evaluation done on Operation Prosper, examining the role and the impact of the SANDF, including its impact on the murder rate. So it was interesting that in the first month, there seemed to be a decrease in the number of killings. But as the deployment continued, the figures showed that the army's presence did not significantly reduce numbers in the affected communities over the deployment period as compared with similar ones where the army was absent. So I want to summarize to say that we are strong on the view that there's actually police failure in dealing with gangsterism on the Cape Flats. We have engaged with the minister since his appointment last year. We had a meeting with General Patekile and his team, the provincial commissioner. And what became clear is, and the minister said it last year in Mitchell's Plain, he said, there's actually no plan. And when he reported back a few weeks after that, they presented a plan, what you call it, a PowerPoint presentation. And afterwards, we ask again, where is the full plan? We'd like to see the plan and engage with the plan. So I can tell you up to now, we have not received a plan. The minister went further in January in Kabega when he said that the South African Police Service is not equipped to deal with gangsterism and organized crime. We met him just before Parliament opened. And I said to him, Minister, we appreciate your honesty, but that is also not enough for us, because that honesty is not giving hope to communities. It is saying that we are fighting a losing battle. And he alerted to the fact that the president is going to make this announcement. Now, it is, as you say, there are people from communities, there are different organizations that have called for the deployment of the army. But we have been looking at it, as I say, in a very sober manner, academic research. We looked at evaluation of Operation Prosper. And to be short, we came to the conclusion that the deployment of the army has not brought about, lasting changes. In fact, what we are experiencing right now is that gangs have even increased their impact, their operations. They become more sophisticated, even though some of, like the Ralph Stansfield and others are at the moment behind bars. So it says to you that gangsterism is a very complex and deeply rooted phenomenon in our communities. And that is what we would like to be addressed.
You used the word surrender. Why that? How have we surrendered if we do this?
I think we want to make it clear that the police have failed. You can't sugarcoat this. You can't sugarcoat, and I'm being pressed sometimes in interviews for us to say actually there's incompetence. But we have chosen as the Cape Crime Crisis Coalition, and we told it to Reverend General Patekile when we met him. I said to him, General, at that particular stage that people are calling for your resignation, for you to resign or be fired. But here we are engaging with you because we, as the Cape Crime Crisis Coalition, has chosen to still engage with you. So what we are asking is, and we told that to the minister also, we don't just want to hear about your plans. We want the community to co-design with you. And that they have committed to that now. So we in a process now that we have said, you yourself as police have identified, shall I say, the top hotspots in terms of gang-related killings and so on. It varies from 18 to 32. Now let's start with those and work with the station commanders. Let's listen to the CPFs and the communities, the representatives on the ground, what they've been complaining about. And one of the things that comes through every time is under-resourcing. There's not really an appreciation of the what people are doing on the ground, the neighborhood watches, and how they put their lives at risk, with no pay, no stipends, and so on, just because they believe to fight for the safety of people. And we want that to be acknowledged.
Yeah. I think this is a poignant pause that we take, because this is where you can speak to the reality of that, Roshanda, as a community worker, but as an activist who has given everything and risked your own safety and your family's safety, that you no longer feel safe in your house or in your country, that you have to flee to keep yourself safe. Speak to that, because you've been doing this work and creating awareness, Llewellyn as well, for almost decades, and put your life at risk every time, like many others. Speak to that.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you. It's such a sad reality that me as an activist and a community worker, had to come to realization. I think I can just add on to what Llewellyn has already said. Myself, I'm totally against the army coming in as a parachute. In Medenburg, we have experienced that. I mean, before Prosper, there was Fiela and all of that. And I've experienced it, and I've also experienced the aftermath of it. Because by the army would then zoom out, then you have your human right violations that took place, and the army cannot be kept accountable for it. And we as activists and community workers sit with that aftermath where people are traumatized, they have been violated, and you don't have clear answers. I think for me also, the fact is, as activists and community workers, we had marches over and over again. And with our marches came petitions with guidelines. This is what needs to happen. I mean, in 2009 already, we started by directing and saying, this is what's happening, this is your hotspots. I spoke the other day and I said, when nobody else had a WhatsApp group, I already had a WhatsApp group with everybody on it. Law enforcement, you just name it. And we organized as a people, but we never got the support from our state departments to say, listen, we will absorb you into us and we will recognize you for the hard work that you are doing. People went to many lengths. I had to tell a mother a few weeks back that searched for me on Facebook, and she inboxed me on Messenger, and she said to me, I was threatened and I'm thinking of you, and I'm saying to myself, I cannot be the next Roshanda, but I also cannot keep quiet. I cannot keep silence about what is happening, but my children are going to be killed because where I live, here is murders happening in broad daylight, and we don't know who to trust in police because we see police coming here and they are on the payroll. So it's far beyond what police intend to do. And for me, it is, and like I said, when I heard the president making that statement of the army, I said a lot of money going down the drain instead of applying that money to prevent. We need that action plan had to happen in 2009 already, where we had to put preventative measures in place, something that I have preached over and over again. I also want to extend this. It cannot be just focused on police. Police is one entity. We must know the real crux of the matter is your housing, your health, your unemployment, no schooling for children. Imagine a lot of our children are out of school. They have become open targets to be incorporated in the gangs. Our young girls are selling their bodies. just merely to survive. So it's not a gang issue alone anymore. We must look at it holistically, and all these departments must come together with the activists on the ground, because it's the activists that is the frontliners in fighting and combating crime. They pick up these issues, and that for me is a partnership, a strong partnership between the activists and the community bodies that are working and fighting on the front line with the government agencies. And we must, this for me is the most important. There must be safety put in place for any community worker, any community activist, because when I needed it, it wasn't there. There was no safety. There was no safety net for my family when I was already in safety, and they shot through my house. I tried to call people. Nobody was available. And the very same people we tend to, smear to say they are drug addicts, they are this and that. Those were the people that came out in the middle of the night, and they kept my children safe until the morning I could come. So not even the law enforcement protected my children when they came on the scene. They just look at the bullet stumps and where all the holes was and told my children, you must walk to the police station to report it, where they could have radioed it in to say, this is happening. Everybody knew Rushanda Pesco. They knew I was testifying. Yet that was the result. No trauma support, nothing. Colleagues and comrades on the ground that serving on the ground stepped in the next morning to give trauma support. Now, if we look in a gang-infested area with all that trauma center back in the days, hands was full. Because it's the influx of school children. You have your elderly. They all come in. They are all traumatized. Now we are sitting with communities that is not sane. Believe me, they are not sane. You can just look at how dirty our communities are, how children function on school. Nothing is working normal, and people are trying to normalize it.
I want to touch on that because actually, Llewellyn, also with your pastoral background, and let's talk about you said now the communities are not sane. What does it do to children to see your children grow up in that environment day in and day out? And let me also just say for the record, I grew up on the Cape Flats. So I know till this day when I hear an exhaust shoot or I hear it's too loud, instinctively you duck. Instinctively you wonder, is that a gunshot? Is that a bullet? Because that is all you heard. It's embedded in you, in your psychology. So talk to us about that, because you saw it every day, and you saw it, Llewellyn, as someone, as a shepherd trying to guide your flock. Let's talk about that mentality when that is all that you know.
I think, Rushenda, maybe you want to go first.
When you say you put it right on the nail, because why, that is all you know. People are assuming, people are running when they're shooting, they are condoning, they are enjoying. That is all they know. And the running is, it can be my child or my brother or my sister lying there that has been shot. So my instinct is telling me I must go and see. I remember one night I was sitting in my dining room and my children, they went to mosque. And the gunshots rang out and I froze immediately. And my friend that was living at me at that time, she said to me, let's go and look. It can be our children there. As I came to the crime scene, I just saw the feet of the person lying there, and the person had the same tekkies and jeans on as my son. I totally forgot that my son went to mosque. I immediately went lame and I started crying and I said, I don't want to see anymore. And she went closer and she said, Oh, thank God it's not him. But that numbness that overwhelms you. And that goes with the children. Up till today, I can't handle if people pop balloons. I can't. My whole body goes into shock if I hear a balloon being popped. My whole body shivers. Today I think of my grandson. They used to laugh at him because he would go in a panic and find a quiet corner and he would make himself so small just to be safe. We had a trauma center, Sonder and primary. Their children wet themselves. Their children couldn't sleep. We had to get psychologists in for them. But how do you treat a person that have to go to that same environment? How do I expect that child to function normal? And so therefore, people got angry at me when I said, well, the police is not coming. We need to mediate because those boys that are shooting is our own children here. We have to reach out to everybody that is a part of what is happening because the police must do their work, but we must stabilize this area for our children and our elderly. I mean, elderly people were shot and killed on the street going to church, going to the shop. That is how terrible it was, and now it's 10 times worse. Because why the gangs, like Llewellyn has said, has grown in numbers, and they have grown in the areas. The demarcation of the areas has also broadened. And the artillery that they use, the ammunition. First, you would hear the gang violence have to stop because they have no bullets. Now they have like an overflow of bullets. It does not stop. And they keep the police busy that are already under-resourced by shooting sporadically. So if we don't have enough boots on the ground, and 10 shootings are happening in different places at one time, and Menenberg have to go and Yap, Hanover Park, and there's not going to be a. In the end, it boils down to the people in the community that must be organized and are able to guide police to say, okay, this is what happened here. This is your perpetrator. This is the person. I mean, personally, myself, I had to do it at times where I need to, my safe contact in police, I would say, listen, this is the person, this is where it's happened, this is what transpired, this is what I got from the ground. Once they've done their work, we would just check in to say if it was fine, was it correct, and so on. But that is helping the police to do successful work. When the corruption came in, that is when people got afraid. Even up till now, people tell me, you know what? We care for you. We worry. We would want you to be here because you were really a voice. But we have also experienced now where they have shot and killed community workers. And we're now afraid if you might come back, you will get killed, and we don't want that. So that is why, it's a sad thing that at the one end, my heart is bleeding. I want to be there. I want to be there for my people, and then I want to be with my family. At the same time, my children said, it's better to have a mother far away knowing she's alive than a dead mother that's going to be here. So I have to compromise that.
I think
just trauma that I'm speaking of.
For people that don't know the background to it, Rushanda, maybe just tell them why you're not in South Africa briefly, because people don't know that you had to flee and keep yourself safe. Otherwise, you were going to get killed. And then, Llewellyn, you can talk to us about having to guide and having to help traumatize people. Because in moments like that, Llewellyn, people want to ask, but where is God? Where's Allah? I mean, why are we literally sitting ducks for others to kill us?
Yes.
Roshana, just give them context, please.
I think I to the context, I testified against a gang leader and of his gang members that committed murder right in front of me, an assault that resulted in a murder. Nobody wanted to testify. Me as an activist, I believe you walk the talk, and I testified. The night before I testified, they have put a hit on me, and they went to my house and they shot through my whole house. After that, I was in safety, protected by an organization for 5 years with my family until there was no more funds and we had to return back. On that, supporters of the fight from South Africa, also South Africans, they said, no, you cannot stay there. We know how gangs operate. They make you relax and comfortable and they will kill you because why you have done what many wouldn't dare to do. So they bought me a ticket to leave the country and said, and what a heavy heart I had to leave eventually because I had to stay with my children. Housing did not come through. They had to transfer my house. They didn't do that. There was not support from the state. After you have testified, it's over. They are done with you. And so I was kind of on my own. And that is, but coming back to the trauma, trauma is something that you ask God, where are you in this? And it's a point of weakness. And I never knew that I was impacted so much until I think the first year out of the country, I felt very ill. And some people that knows me, I have really grown in size and I couldn't understand. And all the trauma that I have went
Gives your body.
through and have experienced, when the doctors got the chance to go over me, the doctor said, you're not diabetic, but the stress and the trauma made you diabetic. And I was shocked. I experienced a heart attack and they said, it was the volume, excessive volume of trauma that you went through and your body just can't anymore. And I'm realizing all the old people in our communities are being put on Voltaren, Tramadol for pain. If this happened to me, it's not only the bullets killing them, it's the trauma killing them and getting the wrong medication for it. And that for me is so sad because does our government realize this is what's happening to our people? This is what they are going through. This is the trauma. And I'm thinking of my grandson that threw himself through a window out of fear and trauma. He almost lost his leg. His leg was almost cut off. And that is him. What about the thousands of children in our Cape Flats communities that is undergoing it every day of their lives? Their parents have to compromise every day. Will my child come safe home? Is my child safe leaving? That is a constant fear. And that is why I think in one of the live streams, I said, you know what? The one thing that comes out of all of this, and this is something that I tell people, somehow we have to face and turn our faces to God and really reach out to Him. And that is the only way we can do it, because out of my experience, that is what anchored me. But I cannot tell that to a person that has been victimized just now. I cannot tell that to a person that child has been shot and killed in their arms. How do I tell that to that person? That person don't want to hear at that moment. And so this is the crisis our communities are in now currently. This is the crisis where I say the only time they go into the mosque and into the church is to a funeral. They don't attend church. They don't attend mosque because there is no spiritual feeding. They don't get the feeding that they want. The only time, this is my friend, I have to attend the funeral and then they are seen there. But other than that, my own son, that was, the guy that came to shoot at the house, emptied 2 magazines on him. 2 magazines. And that trauma has never left my son. And when I speak to him and I practically preach to him, he say, I'm not there. I'm not on that level yet. As much as you're going to say face your fears, face this, face that. I cannot even cope if I get a job because it constantly flashes in front of me. If I have to take the taxi, where's that guy? He might come and just shoot me because he's afraid I'm going to testify against him for shooting at the house. My son walked away from that case out of fear. He said, the state has left you out to die. What is going to happen to me? Why must I still talk? Then they're literally going to kill me. So that is the reality our people are living with.
And I'm sure you've heard those kind of concerns and worries and anxieties. Mense wat nie weet, maar pastoor, waar's God? Waar's God? Where is God?
Yeah.
So
Now, interestingly, Lynette, when I did my master's in clinical pastoral care, I had to write a mini thesis that's now about 2001. And the title of that was Die trauma van geweldsmisdaad op geloofsgemeenskappe. And it was in that mini thesis that I had one chapter on gangsterism, and it just further triggered me to go a little bit deeper into it. And the thesis, the title of my thesis for my doctorate was In Search of a Family, the Challenge of Gangsterism to Faith Communities. So one, it speaks about the fact that as a pastor, a minister, a reverend, I became aware of the trauma that in at that stage, violent crime in general had on the functioning of faith communities. Back then, I started my ministry in Bishop Lavis. You started realizing how the violence impacted on the normal functioning of the faith communities, but also individually on people. And in a sense, it has never decreased. In fact, it has become worse over the years. So that, there's very few ministries, churches that I know that in especially in certain areas dare to have evening services or gatherings in the evening because they fear, because of the reality of what is going on. And I think for me, I go back, and this thing of trauma is something that I think that needs even more attention. I always say we need much more than the available pastors, duminis, fathers, and imams, and so on. We need to train people in trauma counseling, so that we can deal with this deep and wide-ranging trauma in our communities. It's generational trauma. It is historical trauma. I say COVID also came and also, put another layer of trauma on.
Yes.
And it is what South African psychologists actually coined the term continuous traumatic stress years ago, because they realized that it is not a question of post-traumatic stress, an event happening and trauma flowing from that, but the socio-economic conditions is causing or are causing trauma to continue and be carried over from one generation in poverty and so on and so on. So we are also a broken nation.
There we go.
And that is why life has become cheap, because people don't appreciate the sanctity of life. And that's where it comes in that we continue continue to preach that. And I'm against, some pastors are going around and ignoring the reality of the context and just focus on, some individualistic aspect of it. So it is deep, it is not addressed. And again, coming back to the deployment of the army, that's exactly what Rosenda is saying. The root causes are not being addressed.
Yes.
And we hear whole of government, whole of society approach. But the government work in silos. So just to say, that is one of the reasons why at the end of last year, because as a Cape Crime Coalition, we don't want to just, spin the same old story. That's why we say,
yes,
we wrote to the Premier because we thought we start there, our reading from that particular section of the Constitution. And we said, Mr. Premier, we ask you to declare a state of disaster in the hotspot areas. A state of disaster is different from a state of emergency. Because as Rosenda said, we say a policing or security approach to addressing what our communities are experiencing is not enough. So we need all those departments to come together. We need them to draw in the community also, because in the community you have intelligence, in the community you have people volunteering, and so on and so on. So please stop.
It is someone's child.
Yeah.
It's someone's child. It's members that come from those communities.
Yeah.
They're not strangers.
Yeah. And interestingly, the Premier, and it's not to expose him, but there's the reality. He did not even bother to respond to us. We wrote 3 letters. The one asking for the declaration, we followed up and asking for a meeting to discuss this proposal. Beginning of this year, we wrote again. We said, this is the 3rd time we're writing to you. He went public to say his cabinet discussed it and he's going to take it to the minister, the national Kokta minister and the minister of police. Up to today, not even a formal acknowledgement of our letter and say, yes, let us engage. So this is what we're fighting for the community to have a voice. And the Cape Crime Coalition are not claiming that we are the only voice, but we are a voice, and we want the communities also to do their part and stop just blaming, the government, and say, what is it that we can do to address this?
But you see, I know now that we spoke that the army is going to be deployed on the Cape Flats. But the issue is not just on the Cape Flats. We've seen subsequently the calls for deployment in Gqeberha, in Galvindale, for example. When I started Focus, 14, 15, 16 years ago, that was one particular place that we visited. And I recall we had a live broadcast that night. Dani Juffers came from the Cape. I came from Joburg. Keith Seister was in Port Elizabeth. On that night, a few hours before we went live the Sunday night, there was a shooting in Galvindale. The people were standing there. It is since then that they have cried out. They have begged involvement. Know us. Ken ons and Hiri and the different approaches in your plans. Don't do this in isolation. In Johannesburg, in Eldorado Park, there's been gang fighting for turf. It's not as if people do not know. It's not as if the government has not known that this has been going on. A surge. And this is why the residents are asking, why now? is this just political posturing to seem like we are doing something? But there is the root causes, as you've pointed out earlier, Llewellyn, that is not addressed.
I want to commend you on that. I think it was before COVID, yes. It was going crazy in Eldorado Park. I connected with people, activists on the ground that was working there. And the sad part of it is, like I say, I hate it when I see our people having to beg on their knees to be heard, to be taken notice of, because that is not the government we should vote for. The government should rush to come and serve our people. And we in Cape Town, where we organized that march, and Llewellyn, you were part of that march.
Yeah.
We handed the memorandum, and we didn't exclude Joburg and those areas. Because already then, through the work that we were doing on the ground, and one of the things is what we've learned is the gangs are all connected everywhere in South Africa. So the gangs have migrated, the Cape Flats gangs have migrated to Joburg and Durban, and we knew that already. And some of them were telling us, oh, the same gangs has started here in our area and so on. And we started broadening our work to say, this is not a Cape Flats phenomenon. This thing has migrated to a bigger setup. And so if our police are not going to wake up, because we see the South African police force as our safety sector, they should be alert. Intelligence should be alert. We organize the people to say, listen, have your people, your networks on the ground, in your streets, in your blocks, and so on, because that is how information gets quickly sent. And let us see if we can set up a safety net of police that we can work with. Sadly enough, even those police that we trusted within the force, they stepped out because they are afraid of their lives. Now, you don't have a safe line because, like I say, people are still contacting me, still asking, don't you have a safe line so that we can channel this information so police can do this? I cannot guarantee that because everybody that I worked with is not there anymore. They've retired, they've taken the package, they said, we can't. And so where do we leave the people that still want to try their best, knowing that it's not safe, and still wanting and believe change is possible? It's how we do that change. And therefore, it's important that we must do a holistic approach, and everybody will serve in the respective spaces that they are equipped to serve in. And that is how communities organize themselves. Everybody's not going to be one that keep the children safe.
Yeah.
Everybody is not going to be a trauma support worker, but we are all skilled with a certain skill where we then will spread our wings out and we will serve our community. So we are prepared to be a partner.
Talking about that, because we said earlier on, I think Llewellyn touched on it, and he said that it needs to be a co-design. You can't do this in isolation. You can't say, yes, we have a plan, but you don't know how is that going to be implemented, for how long, what is the chain of either involving people, but also surely you're not just going to have them there for what and for how long. What is the next step? What is the next step? Who's going to be held accountable? How do we measure the efficacy of that plan? Because at the moment, and we are renowned for having brilliant plans, but nothing comes of it.
Yes.
So do we see this, Llewellyn, as a strategy, or as a preventative strategy, or must we just admit it and say to ourselves, listen, man, elections. This is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Again, the people are being played.
It's a political position that is being taken to say, okay, the people need a quick fix. How do we quick fix? Quick fix is bringing in the army. What I think they do not reckon with, our people has also grown mentally. There are certain people that see between the lines, that you cannot give jam and butter anymore. They know what you are up to. They know what you are doing. And therefore, my question will be, it's going to be millions spent to bring in the army. Now, why do we not spend that millions and empower these communities
Sure.
to be able to help and serve themselves? And our government agencies must then, in order to assert and make these communities stronger, support what, because you don't have the 20 vehicles, but you have 100 feet on the ground that can give you the information, that can collect this and the other for you, that will save money, and you are not prepared to put the bread on the tables because unemployment is rife. But if you say to a community worker, I'm prepared to give you 500, they will take it with open arms. At least I'm not putting my life on the risk for nothing now. I have something. My family can live. You know how many community activists are being killed, then they don't have a dead bureau. Is there trust to protect a neighborhood watch worker that are sitting there working right through the night? There's no trust. When those families die, those members die, we have to take out of our But they don't want to empower. They don't want to empower these community structures that are putting everything in without
Everything
any
on the line.
protection.
Yeah. No, I also definitely think, as I said in another interview, it's smelling too much, political tricks, because the local government election is coming up. And that's the sad thing. So I saw some comments, on our opposition to this deployment, because people are desperate. They really think this is going to bring change. They put their hopes every time in the politicians. And we say we are not cold, towards what is happening in our communities. But we are sick and tired of political games. We are sick and tired of people being taken for a ride. We are sick and tired of looking at the opening of Parliament having become a red carpet event in the midst of what communities are experiencing. Why the hell do we need that? Spending millions, for example. Why do we have to have such a big bloated cabinet? Why can't the money be channeled in the right direction? That is what we're asking. But we also need competent people in these positions. Unfortunately, what we see is too many people have titles and positions, and that's that. So again, what's coming out of the Madlanga Commission and the Parliamentary Committee is scandalous. Up to the highest ranks, people are corrupt. They're supposed to serve us, and they're not doing it. They're serving their own interests and their pockets. So our dear president, who tries to, with his charming way, to charm his way into our hearts, we cannot fall for that any longer. Ons kom te lank aan.
We know
om nie deur dit te sien nie. En te sê, sorry, jy gaan nie meer vir ons kom two-time met hierdie soort van goed nie.
Ons is nie vaak nie.
Ons is nie vaak nie. And this is what we're saying. So again, as we try as a coalition to be very, shall I say, responsible in our approaches. We have in our midst, people like Jeremy Veery with all the expertise and experience that help
yes.
us. We have academics, and a person like Irvin Keenes, who comes from Menenberg and who worked in Parliament with that portfolio committee, who's now criminology at UCT. We have built partnerships with Institute for Children and Family at UWC, because we say we need you, because what we want to do is not, flesh in the pan type of things. It's not just to be emotional about this.
Yes.
We want lasting peace. We're sick and tired of picking up bodies, of burying, of sitting with the trauma, of sitting with children who fall out of the system and nobody cares, but the gangs see an opportunity to recruit.
Yes.
And even the police are saying it more and more, their concerns about the young children being recruited into gangs and given guns to be hitmen.
I think I sent this to you. I sent this to you. A total of 345 murders were recorded in the Western Cape in January, averaging 11 killings per day, with 148 deaths reported in the final 2 weeks of the month.
Yes.
That is the reality of everyday living. It's not survival anymore because you just do not know when that stray bullet can hit you.
Yeah. I was saying in church this morning, the killing of Amara in Bridgetown, 9-month-old, it really, shook my heart, because my youngest grandchild is 9 months old, my Nunus. And I was thinking, wow, another child that died. And I mentioned to the congregation, that's not the only child. A 7-month-old dies in the queue at Sasa in Belleville. And so we can continue. These are the things, Lynette, that makes me keep on doing what I'm doing, fighting what I'm fighting, remembering why we struggled against apartheid, for the dignity of ourselves and our people, for us to have this life. What is it that the ANC promised us? What's a life for all? And we still
better life
struggling.
For all. A better
We're still
life
struggling
for all.
for that. And they have totally neglected us as communities. Look what's going on in this country. And you're right about the northern suburbs in Kabega, the Eldos and places, and Easterus in Pretoria. Those communities suffer the same. It is the same phenomenon. So one need to ask, is there political will to change things? Why are these communities not? Yeah. Okay.
I want to flip. I want to flip. Hold on, just for a moment, Rushanda. For those of our viewers who've been watching and listening, and not necessarily engaging with what we're talking about, I am wondering, and I want to flip the script though. Why do you think, Llewellyn? Why do you think, Rushanda? Are there communities? Are there people that feel and are convinced that the army is the answer, that is going to bring about change, Rushanda? Why do you think there are people watching this who's going to watch this on repeat, who's going to quote Llewellyn and you? Why do they believe that this will make the difference?
There's two things. Some people are frustrated with, and that they expect the army to do. The one is the skop en donder attitude, om het nou so te stel. Then there's people that are calling for the death sentence. So yes, the army do come in with a scope and donor, but they don't know who they scope and donor. It is an innocent father and an innocent son, and sometimes even woman. So that is the reality what the army brings in. They don't talk, and there's no guidance to tell the community beforehand. Listen, yes, the army is right. This is what's going to happen. Please, those that are not part of these gangs, this is a curfew we put on to say be inside because they are going to do their work. There's nothing like that. So that is the attitude the army comes with. Now, for community activists, that is going to be a challenge because the people then run to them and the army is left with the police to. That is the impact of trauma that I'm talking about. That some people, yes, they call for the army and they feel, hey, you just grab this gangster by the neck and you just finish. My fear, my greatest fear, even now, the imam was shot and killed. If the perpetrators are not being caught, we're going to sit with the element where Pagat is going to say, we're going to do the police work. Then we have volunteerism. And can our people still afford that? So that is my greatest fear.
I forgot that time when Pagat was so operational in the Cape and how people felt, well, if the police are not going to protect us, at least they will protect us. And we had that vigilantism that you mentioned.
Yes, and it's with the murder of the imam and another imam that was shot, that's still fighting for his life. Pagat has already put out a statement. They're going to catch these perpetrators. And I mean, we know when they take a position, they are not going to get easily off it. And my fear is, again, if we have a failed police system, the police is going to use them as a riding ticket to handle the situation they don't want to even look at. Because that is what's going to be taking place. They're going to be exploited. Once they are used, then we're going to criminalize them and put them in prison again. But at the same time, people are calling for a Kopskitan donor situation where people come forward and just tackle this thing. That is what people are asking for.
Yeah. And people are desperate. I mean, people are really desperate. And that's why we always say we understand the levels of frustration, the levels of, almost a sense of hopelessness. And that's why people are calling for the army thing. Because it is from this situation of all we experience is the failure of the state.
Yes.
So please do something. There must be an intervention. And again, it is our voices that come in and say, yes, we understand. But, this is not going to be the answer. The army itself sits with challenges. Huge challenges.
Yes, we've seen those.
So how are they going to deal with 3 areas, the Western Cape, Cape Town, Gqeberha, and Gauteng, with already stretched in terms of resources? I was on another program the other evening, when somebody from the military academy spoke, and she said, even amongst the soldiers, there's a discomfort with this deployment thing. They are not really comfortable because they know they're not equipped, to deal with this. And they know they will be criticized if they come with their training mentality into a situation.
Yes.
I was thinking something else, and I haven't even, discussed it with my colleagues who's much more knowledgeable about. But given what is happening in gangs now in 2019, gangs have, the part of their strategy was just to go underground. And that's what they said. Ons weet ons moet laag lê nou. But we know the army won't be here forever, but we will be here.
Forever.
Now, with the increased recruitment of young boys and them being given guns, just imagine them pushing these young boys even to shoot on the army. And the army knows only one response. I'm just thinking about this. It's a possibility. And then the
entrapment in that
almost
way.
the unintended consequences of that will be the same communities then that will cry out and say, look what the army is doing, you know. Yeah.
My greatest fear on this side, I've even told my children, please, I pray for you, protect yourselves at any cost. You know what's going to happen, because we're not speaking about the gang of 2019 or 2009 and 2005. We're speaking of a highly trained gang now, highly organized and weaponized.
Absolutely.
So even though the army comes in, we can be a Palestine on the Cape Flats. With the police, the police with the army and the gang and their guns shooting back at each other. What about the citizen, the civilian? Because they don't care. The gangs are shooting back at police. We've seen how they kill police. So we cannot say, we are guaranteed they're not going to retaliate if the army is coming in. And now, like I say, we have Pagat. So as the state is organizing, the army, Pagat is organizing themselves, do we think the gang is sitting still and just waiting? Because they have become brazen. They have grown brazen. They know the law is non-functional. At times, they are more clever than us, and they know information first and before we even got it. So, because we're speaking now of gang leaders that are highly educated and know how when it comes to technology. And so I always say, my first visit to Eerste, I was shocked at how, if you enter Eerste, they go on a two-way radio, and before you get to your other post, they know already you a person that does not belong here that's coming in. So already they are searching who you are. That is how they operated, 10 years back. What are they now? They are far bigger now. They've grown now. And a lot of our young people that has been educated, went into matric and technology, children learn very quickly. They have been roped into those gangs. You don't know who's a gangster now in front of you because they are dressed smartly, they are clean, they present themselves well. And then this is the biggest criminal standing next to you. That is the reality our people are facing now. And it's those children in our communities that's underprivileged that are being used and shoved the gun in their hands just for a meager loaf of bread, or you'll get by the end of the month a pair of tekkies, or the promise if you get in court or you die, we will bury you or we will look after your family, which we know the reality is that never happens. But the desperation are moving our children towards that.
Yes.
And so, again, I'm going to emphasize the army coming in. Yes, our people are desperate, but I would beg from our people, let us be sensible in saying that money can be applied where we create jobs for people, where there's a shortage of teachers on the schools that cannot maintain all the children. Let us get that teachers so all children can get education. Let us have not one trauma center, but a few trauma centers. Our hospitals must be capacitated to deal with the trauma that people are having. The churches and the mosques must become active members of that communities they are serving. There must be offices where people are trained and they are able to work. and serve.
Mm.
That is what we must put in place. That is what we will find. Even some gang members in that communities, they come for that services because they are finding themselves. I got into this thing and never knew it's going to be this bad. So now I want to be out.
Escalate. True. But apart, even if you do then as a strategy to address the crisis, have the army there. Let it not be in isolation. The
There we go.
community
There we go.
needs to be consulted. You can't just expect people to, we've got to see you. It reminds me, Llewellyn, so much when I was at school during the state of emergency that we went to school. The army was at the gate. We come out, the army's at the gate. They walk up and down. You can't relax. You are so scared. Nothing feels normal, sane. They walk up and down, walk up and down. How can that be living? How can that be your reality? Surely, if you want to do this, involve the community, all the other organizations, so that you have buy-in,
Yes.
that you can be trusted, that you can be believed.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Lynette, I think what we're busy doing, and we hope to sort of also submit it to the minister, because, as I said, our standpoint is very clear. In principle, we're against the deployment of the army, but we realize it's going to happen.
Yes.
So we have sit again, with the experience and the research from the previous deployment, and we're busy drafting a document that will speak to what is needed, for the deployment, and that, for example, include also an exit strategy, not just to be there and then leave and nothing. So what must be in place when the army leave, things like that. So all the things that myself and Rosenda has said tonight, it comes into play, the input from the community. We're calling on communities to themselves, take responsibility for what's going on, to demand transparency, to demand to be kept informed of what's going on, etc., etc. So that document we're busy refining now, as I say, because it's gonna happen. So it's no use we sit now and say, nothing that we can do. So I think just to say that's the way we're thinking and operating, not to sideline ourselves, but again to use experience in and engage with the minister. So hopefully this week there's going to be a follow-up meeting with him, and as I say, we're very honest with him. As I said, it's no use to be honest your side and you don't come up with something that can give hope to communities. But this thing of about addressing the root causes, the socioeconomic conditions, that is key to to change within communities, to lasting peace within communities, to giving people's dignity back, to restoring the trust in the police. The police will have to work damn hard to restore that trust, because that trust is really broken. And it can start with the recognized structures like your CPFs. But, the CPFs are also in turmoil in many of our areas, unfortunately, where we've heard, station commanders, refusing to work with CPFs, for example, bringing their own people on the CPFs. Of course, gangs and others, also political parties, also infiltrating CPFs. So a good sort of body within the community is facing a lot of challenges also. So we're trying to address all that and even engaging with the CPF provincial board, hopefully also within the next week or two, to say, let us partner. We must stop this thing of being territorial like the gangs, we don't work with you and so on. Because over the year and a half that we've been busy with this crime coalition, I say the majority of people in many areas, the majority of people are not criminals, are not involved in gangsterism. So how do we harness that energy, that agency into a force that will, push back? And so that taking back our communities is not just a slogan, but a program of action within each community.
A woman is the most powerful in communities. I want to tell you something, Llewellyn, and you keep that element, work with everybody as long as we can stop, because back in the day, those gang leaders, some of the gang leaders, their wives would work with me. Though they would not work with me, but their wives would work with me, and they would literally inform me, sideline, this is what's going to happen, please do something. And then I would always laugh and say, I cannot do anything. I'm going to fight now with police or this one or that one to see to it that the forces is here to stop this thing from happening. So people are willing, and that's why I agree. Not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants the shooting. I had one thing that I said, if the police catch you with your drugs, it's on you. But if I see you shooting in my community, I'm bringing the police personally to you, because that bullet can kill anybody. And so we had that thing where they knew it's not going to fly by me. Dit gaan nie verby my kom nie, want ek gaan nie allow dat jy skiet nie. My kind kom uit die skool uit en loop my kind in 'n bullet vas. So ek dink die government, wat ons op government provincially en nationally gedoen het, structures soos Bambanani wat op die skole gewees het, they had a safe line for children when they came out of school. Maar hulle was ook daar as die ouers vanoggend vroeg die taxi vat, dan is hulle safe. Nou sien ons hoe grab en snatch en almal die en mense word letterlik amper vermoor in hulle eie karre as hulle weg toe gaan. And so you don't have the structures on the corners where people saw visibility, even if the police is not there. Maar as iemand wat gaan kie, as ek nou geroep word, dan is daar 10 mense wat gaan kie dat ek nie geroep gaan word nie. That is not there because people do not feel safe. Also, neighborhood structures, hulle moet careful wees hoe hulle beweeg. Soos ek nou sê, daar's nie 'n trust. By now we had to have a trust for our neighborhood watchers. If anything happens to one of them, we can bless the family and say the work was not in vain. But not even that is there. We have no support for them. We cannot help each other. And government cannot help us. And that is the kind of things where I say, I don't even think that government must second guess in partnering with the communities and feeding the funds that is available through these structures to say, listen, this is what we would like to see in the day. Together we can make it. Yeah. We cannot stand as individual partners. And our greatest responsibility is there's loan policy, housing in our communities is a most important thing. Because what if there's drugs found at the house, guns is found at the house, the police know they must report at the housing office. So now you can strategize and you can see there's a pattern. This house has been over and over found.
There's also consequences.
Yeah. So these are the things that are not being done anymore. People just stop doing it, and the departments there's a breakdown. They don't work with each other, and that is why I say a holistic approach give us impactful work that we are doing to bring the communities out of that and show them we are here and we're meaning business. We are here to walk the journey with you. And if government comes alongside, that strengthen the fight against crime.
Llewellyn, I want to thank you that you have availed yourself and for your involvement. And I think it is so important that we have these conversations. And one of the reasons I created the public's platform is because we all know we come from organizations. We've seen there's always something. We won't call it agendas, but you hear spokespeople, and Llewellyn represents not just a church. He represents the Cape Crime Crisis Coalition. He speaks on behalf of, and sometimes, often, what we need is not, we call it vox pops, right? You just go out in the streets and you ask a few people and you have it and it's a nice sound bite. We need platforms, we need spaces where we actually just sit and listen to what people are saying. We don't need to always come with the answers or the solutions, but people feel they are not being seen, they are not being heard, they are being killed, they are being left to find and fight for themselves. And they want to know, am I safe? If you say you're going to send the army, are you here to protect me? Or is it just posturing? Is it just so that it looks good? It's wonderful to make that national statement. But what's in the underbelly? I have to go to school. I have to go to work. I want to go to church, but I don't feel safe. My pastor can't come and see me when I'm sick. I have to go to stand in a SASSA line. I don't feel safe because they're going to rob me or they're going to shoot. And in a stray bullet is going to hit either me or my child or my grandchild or my baby. That is the reality of what people have to live with day in and day out. And we hope that there's going to become a time that we're actually going to feel. We are being heard. And this space, and this is why I want to thank both of you. But I'm going to greet you, Llewellyn, because I want to still talk to Rashanda.
Sure.
That you were brave to call a thing a thing.
Yes.
That it's not just a soundbite, people. That it's not just a rehashing. I honestly want us. We need this in South Africa. We the people, need to become courageous and get our voices back because we've been silenced.
Sure.
We need to get our voices back. And the most effective way, now I'm starting to sound like a preacher, but the most effective way is when you use your vote. When you use your vote.
Yeah.
Because if you listen to me otherwise, I will show you the power of my vote. If it's just promises. Because I think nationally we are all just full of promises. We are tired. Our tired is tired. We're done.
Yeah.
We're done.
No, thank you
So
for
I really
having
want
me,
to thank
Lynette.
you, Wanda,
Yeah.
for being
Thank you
so
for having me.
available and being outspoken. I really appreciate it. And the worth of this might not be seen and felt right now, but we know that we don't speak and work in isolation. We know that someone will benefit.
Yes.
And might not be tonight that they say it, but someone will. Our work is not in vain.
Yeah.
Please always remember that, Llewellyn. Your work is not in vain.
Thank you, Lynette. And
Thank you
thanks,
so much for joining me
Rushanda.
this
Good to
evening.
see
Nice
you.
Appreciate it.
Llewellyn.
Yeah. God bless.
That is Dr. Llewellyn McMaster. He's from the Cape Crisis Crime Coalition. And he was joining Rushanda. And I'm asking you to stay for a while, Rushanda, because I do want this conversation to wrap. A lot, Zirian says the Banani thing. I just want to reflect that quickly. Really worked. and then
Yeah.
I can attest to that. Thank you for saying that and sharing that. I had hoped that we could get to the root of a lot of the issues that communities grapple with. But I think you and Llewellyn are more than adequate to raise that. And I am too, because like doen al baie lank die werk. And I
Yeah,
come from the
yeah,
Cape Flats. I do know what it's like to live in Bishop Lavis. I do know what it's like to live in Pontyville. I
yes.
do know what it's like to live in Hanover Park. So I hear that and I see that. I want to quickly just shift and ask you, whilst I have you, the time away. What is being not having your feet on the ground? What has and how is your life changed, Roshanda? Not being here, fixing things, being an activist, being involved, being at the forefront. How has that changed your life? For those that have joined us late and don't know, Rushanda is a community worker and she's an activist, but she's not in our country because she fears for her life and she fears for her family and her children's lives and for her safety. She's not here. But that does not mean that the work has stopped. That does not mean she's not interested and she's not involved. Her heart is not in the country. But a person, God has given us wisdom. You also need to be wise in your approach. But what has this meant for your life and for your work and your heart for the people?
For my work and my art, I think a few activists believe I have still much to contribute. They constantly remind me, we cannot lose you now. You are our guiding light. For me, sometimes I can break down and cry because I find myself in another country as an asylum seeker. So I have to pick up the pieces and start life from scratch, having nothing. And so it's not easy. It's not easy to start all over again. Sometimes I would lie on the bed and I would say, I have a double bed at my house and I'm lying here on a single bed. And I would break down and cry like a baby. So that is the harsh realities, yet the heartbeat of my people. Then a message come through, this one has been shot and killed. Like when I received the message, the notice of the mother with a friend and the 9-month-old baby shot and killed in their home. Immediately, I messaged my children. I said, can you see what is happening? You're not safe in your house. You are left to fend for yourself, but in your house doesn't mean safety because they can come in and kill you in your house. And they had to remind me, Mommy, we've experienced it. And therefore, we make double sure the door and the burglar bar gate is closed and so I will keep on fighting. Like I said, my grandchildren is still there, my children is there, and my heartbeat was always I might not see the work that I've done, how much I've put in and plowed, but I pray to God that at least my children will reap the benefits and their children of the efforts that I've put in. And that's important.
Roshanda,
I
they've
always
been
say to all the activists that still work with me, and I constantly tell them, let me just play behind the scenes. Um, I always tell them, God will reunite us again in His time, and now is not the right time. Um, and maybe this is the reason why I had to be alive, because looking from the outside in, I can see better, in fact, of where the ship needs to go to. What can be done? What can we do better? Where was the pitfalls and so forth? And therefore, I'm still that guiding voice behind the scene. If I need to make a live stream in support of the battle they are going to fight, I do that. Like I say, some people phone me and they would still ask for a private trauma support sessions with me. I do that in my private capacity here from here. that is also giving and still playing my part. Not as loud as I used to be, because my heart is being out there on the street. I said with the shooting and the gang violence, I said, why are you guys sitting still? Why are you not following the streets? Why is the volume low? And like, yeah, but you are there. You will. And it's not about that. And I think for that reason, I'm glad that I am out, because why? I believe each of us have the power to bring change about. It shouldn't just be about the Rushanda. It shouldn't be just about Rushanda's loud voice. We all have a voice. How we do it is what is the great thing. And so I just said to them, fighting this conviction or the 50 years parole that they are fighting now in this rape case. I said to them, guys, I'm here to advise and guide the process, but I'm staying behind the scenes. You lead, and sometimes we must just trust that other people are able and capable to lead, and just be the support system. And that is what I want to say to our government. We know you, the government. We know you are in a position. But it does not mean you are more capable than the person loving it every day to bring the change about. It's that person that will bring the change about themselves. We must not take things out of people's hands. We must allow them to fish for themselves and stop fishing and feeding. I think that is the hard lesson I myself had to learn, being reminded of how I was raised. Sometimes they say oudtyd, guys, oudtyd, maar ons ouers het vir ons sterk groot gemaak, want ons kan vandag ons eie vis gaan vang en ons kan enige grond ingaan en ons gaan survive. Ons kan nie dieselfde sê van ons kinders vandag nie. Unfortunately, it's said we have to coop them up in houses. We don't want them to travel alone because the danger is lurking everywhere. All our children are traumatized, and all our psychologists, they must come out. We need them. We need them in our communities, on our schools, especially for our children, because why? The children get to matric, but if they get on university, they struggle. Not because the work is at times too heavy, the mental processing of things. And they being introduced and having to leave university this afternoon to go back to that community. The mental impact on them is enormous. They cannot cope, but we expect them to cope. Now we're sitting with the influx of a lot of children committing suicide. And sometimes I think people forget to look at it when they hear a person has committed suicide. Yes, but why? The question is not why. The question is, everybody is dealing with something.
Every day. Every day. That's the truth. I'm going to wrap with you, but I wanted to ask, because you had mentioned it in the beginning of our conversation. You said that you did not realize that your body was actually took on all this trauma and was harboring it, and that you had a heart attack, and that you'd been diagnosed with diabetes, and that the physicians have told you that you just didn't even realize it. How are you doing emotionally and physically? And are you hopeful, though, even though you're so far away from your people? Are you hopeful?
I'm very hopeful. When I had the heart attack, the funny thing, the doctors were also shocked. I didn't even realize I'm having the heart attack. Luckily, I was on my way to the doctor that day. They wanted to see me. And as I came in, the nurse looked at me and she said, "You are pale." And I said, "I don't see I'm pale." She said, "You're very pale." And she took my hands. And when she took my hands, she said, "Your whole body is tremoring." I said, "Me? I'm fine." And the doctor said to her, "Put her on the ECG machine." And the moment they put, the next minute, I'm rushed to the hospital. And so the physician at the big hospital, he then looked at my chart. They sent me for this test, that test. He said to me, In fact, he went to Google my name and he said to me, "Woman, you are playing with your life. You're not a robot. You cannot keep on running. This body is saying to you, I am tired, I want to rest. And if you're not going to do that, your body is going to give in, because then I had severe kidney infection. And just a whole lot of cholesterol, things that I've never experienced came out, and they gave me all this medication, and I said, I'm not used to this medication. I'm not taking medication. And he said, well, you have to now, because your body cannot cope on its own. Immediately I got flashbacks, because I always fought it with our people in communities. I asked, how can diabetes make use of tramadol? Why? Everything needs a tramadol. Why? And I
Thank you.
realized our health
True.
system are not able to handle the influx
Mm,
of people to
mm.
make a real diagnosis on our
Yes,
people.
yes.
And the quick
Mm.
fix is a tramadol. And so
I I hear
it's
you.
today I feel blessed. I'm saying this with the utmost respect for our people. It was sad for me to realize, and some guilt. I'm privileged that this
Mm,
doctors has captured me, but I'm losing many in my communities that do not
mm.
have this privilege of being seen by a doctor and being diagnosed correctly. And
I
so
hear you.
they not. That is why I say they do not only fight gang violence, but the impact of trauma on their bodies. That is the greatest bullet that they are getting, is that there's no survival if you are not captured in time. You die of illness you never had, what that was not even intended for you, but the impact of the trauma is creating
Mm,
that illness. And so then we live in a society, these illnesses ask for specific foods for people that already are
yes.
unable to see to it. So how can they sustain, contain without money? We
It's a
eat what we get.
cycle.
Yes.
Yes,
And
it's a
so
cycle.
that is why I say our health workers, I was what about 3 weeks in hospital. I felt very alone. I immediately said to my children, I don't want to die here. You better bring my body home if I die here. And the physician, he saw my pain and how lonely I felt. And he went to call all the South African doctors, and I was shocked. I said, I didn't know
Wow.
there's so many South African doctors. Our people need you there. What are you doing here? And they came to cheer me up. They brought me something nice every day, pop in and talk with me. But the sadness is again, they said, you are activists through and through. It's in your blood because you keep on scolding us. What are you doing here? You must go back. But that is just me, because I know the need is in our country. I know our people need the service that they are giving. In the end, we could separate by me acknowledging it is also not easy for them giving
Yeah.
service, not being seen, to not having a voice, not even being appreciated in the country for the service that they are giving. And so I think, the one thing I've learned is a lot of us find ourselves outside of South Africa. Our bodies are here, but our hearts are still back home. And that we can never go. We can never give
Yeah.
away. It's in our veins.
Very much so. Roshanda, thank you so much for being a guest this evening and for always and still being so bold. I really appreciate it. And I appreciated that you stayed for so long. I do realize that it is taxing on you. I appreciate it. Ek wil hê jy moet weet, ek weet, dis laat. So it's okay. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I'm sure that we will get more comments as people watch the stream either on YouTube or on Facebook. Thank you, and I hope it's not the last time that we will speak. You have my details. I have your
Yeah.
details, and please remain safe.
Thank you, Lynette, and I really appreciate the time and the voice you are giving me. Um, I'm
Kos
so
gelag.
much. Ja, ja, ons kan kan. En ons is nog
Is
altyd
legit.
aktief. Soos ek weer sê, ophou as jy antwoord nie. As voorwaarts en vorentoe. Dat is hoe ons beweeg.
Voorwaarts.
Ja.
A luta continua.
Luta
Absolutely. Thank
continua.
you.
Wala.
Mooi
Okay.
hoor. Thank you for
Goeienaand.
your time. That is and was my guest. The other guest this evening, Dr. Llewellyn McMaster, left us earlier. I wanted to spend more time with Rushanda Pasco. I wanted to thank so many of you for commenting and engaging with the chat. I created specifically this platform. I call it the people's platform because these are issues that you don't need grandstanding. You don't need a studio. You don't need um, a political rally or a space where there's another webinar or another conference. We sometimes just need to go into the streets and talk and allow the people to talk, the people to feel that they are being seen, that they are being heard. And the one thing we have, although some of us feel stifled, is our votes. And we can use our voices by voting. So I'm not in the business of influencing people or telling them how they must think and how they must act. What I am in the business of is that to create safe spaces that people feel seen and heard. And when we can talk, and you don't need to agree with the position that the other person takes, you just need to allow and hold the space for them to feel comfortable enough that they can say what they think and what they believe. And if they choose silence, then that is also okay. So thank you for participating. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for creating awareness. Thank you for liking the chat. I appreciate it. All your engagement with the content, not just this video or this live stream, but all the others that's either on my Facebook page or my LinkedIn page or my YouTube channel, all of that engagement, that activity is registered. And more people are allowed in because the algorithm spreads it, shares it, puts it on their For You pages to create awareness, particularly where they find like minded thoughts or beliefs, or where you've been looking and searching for a space to participate, to comment. All of that happens because of your involvement. And I created the People's Platform specifically because I know from my years of experience, you don't all get to write letters to a newspaper, the newspapers that still exist. You don't all get to phone into a radio station where you are heard or that you're part of a panel in a television production. You don't all have that kind of access. But let's use what platforms are available. It costs you nothing to participate by liking, commenting, or sharing. So if you have found this useful, I grew up in an era where we chanted and said and believed each one teach one. And that is what I always try to do. That if I am affected or it stimulates me or there's a new perspective or something that I did not know, I share it. I share it on my profiles because I feel not just as a journalist, but I feel it's my responsibility to share, to educate, right? So that we never go through life where we say, but I didn't know. I feel it's my responsibility, you know, to even though people say I flood their timelines and their feeds, I feel it's my responsibility to share it. And this is one of the reasons also that I enjoy my channel. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the creative process because I do feel that I can create those spaces. I can create those platforms for those kind of conversations, these kind of conversations to take place. And there's more coming. Daar gaan nog veel meer wees. So thank you for liking, thank you for watching, thank you for sharing. And please consider following me either on Facebook. Follow me. Don't send me a Facebook request. I do not have the space to respond. Follow me, please, and and share these lives with other people that you believe, oh, they can benefit from that. Or follow me also on my YouTube channel. It's called Amplify with Lynette. And it's quite easy if you forget my name. It says there, it says there, Lynette. But Amplify with Lynette, that's all you need to type in. You can see it's Amplify Media there in the corner as well. And you will find me. Thank you so much for this evening. You're going to be surprised because more and more opportunities, I'm creating them for us to engage and for us to be part of the bigger conversation. I used to host a show, a radio show called Praat Saam. And I used to, when I used to write these, the promos, when I was traveling, I used to say, Moenie 'n naprater wees nie. Don't come after the fact and just rehash, regurgitate what other people say. You make up your own mind and become part of the conversation. And with the public's platform, the chat and the comments in the chat, that shapes the conversation. This is where I want you to know I'm being heard, I'm being seen. My opinion counts because it does. And I read them and I try and bring you in. Oh yes, what did you say? Ja, ek mis daai dae praat saam met Lynette op RSG. Yes, but this is where I'm now. And the conversation continues. The education continues. The engagement continues. And it is important for me to know that you feel seen and feel heard, and that you can send your comments to me and your suggestions if there are certain topics that you feel, nee verragtig, daai goose. Sy sal nie skroom om daaroor te praat nie. So feel free to do that. Thank you for your time. I am going to say good night. And I hope you have a great week. And I shall be you'll see me on your feed if you follow me. Then you'll know this is the conversation and that's what we are talking about. And thank you so much for Sunday night, almost 2 hours in my company. I feel blessed. I feel privileged that you chose to spend that time with me on this show. Have a good week.